Coming up today, the death toll from the MERS outbreak in Korea rises to 19 after 3 more people die. More than a dozen patients are in critical condition as 4 more cases are confirmed. South Korea formally signs a nuclear deal with the United States that will allow Seoul to expand its non-military nuclear activities. First, experts are calling for countermeasures against climate change as Korea continues to suffer its worst drought in decades. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Tuesday, the 16th of June. You're tuned into our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks as always for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. We start with the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome or MERS outbreak in Korea, which we've been covering for more than 2 weeks now, as the number of deaths and confirmed patients continues to rise. For the details, let's go straight to Kim Ji-yeon, who joins us at the news centre. Ji-yeon, what's the latest?
Well, unfortunately, Mark, 3 more people died earlier today, bringing the MERS death toll in Korea to 19. 4 more people have tested positive for the disease, bringing the total to 154 confirmed cases. One of the 4 lies in the southeastern city of Daegu, the first case reported there, and another is a 39-year-old nurse in the city of Daejeon, the first medical worker to be infected there. She's believed to have contracted the virus after readjusting her face mask while administering CPR. Currently, 5,586 people have been placed under quarantine or are isolated in their homes, while more than 3,500 have been released. And among this, the Japan-based Kyodo News Agency reports, citing the health ministry here in Korea, that around 20 to 30 foreigners, including 2 Japanese nationals, have been isolated in their homes in Korea, but the 2 have returned to Japan on Monday. The 2 reportedly have left Korea before getting notice from Korean health authorities to stay in the country. And the Japanese government official says that the 2 nationals have been cleared of infection, and he or she adds that the Korea's standards for determining who should be placed in quarantine are much lower than Japan's.
Well, Ji-yeon, it really is a wonder how those 2 managed to leave the country when they're supposed to be in their house under quarantine, and they could, of course, spread the virus to other countries such as Japan. Now, as seen in this case you've just been talking about, foreigners in Korea are being affected now. How is the country dealing with this?
Well, Mark, the government says it'll provide translation services for foreigners believed to have contracted the virus, starting with the Japanese language on Thursday. And also, foreigners who live in Korea who have tested positive for the virus are now eligible to receive the same amount of medical and financial support from the government as Korean nationals. And meanwhile, the government decided Tuesday in a cabinet meeting to provide more than $45.2 million to help eliminate the virus. The funds there will mostly be used for medical equipment as well as support for medical personnel and emergency service workers. Mark.
And Ji-yeon, if there is some good news in this outbreak, it is that more than a dozen people have recovered after contracting MERS. Are we any closer to finding an effective treatment for the virus that could end this battle?
Well, health authorities have injected an anti-serum comprised of antibodies and donated blood from a fully recovered MERS patients into 2 people with the virus who are currently in critical condition. But this procedure is, of course, a last resort since there's currently no cure or vaccine for the MERS virus. We'll have to wait and see if it will work. But this procedure may have a better chance among patients that were in the early stages of the disease, which is different from this case. Back to you, Mark.
Well, thank you, Ji-yeon, for that report there. Now, the conventional wisdom on MERS is that if you're healthy, you will only suffer a mild illness if you contract the virus, but things appear to be taking a turn for the worst. 4 MERS patients who didn't have any existing ailments have died, while 2 patients in their 30s are said to be in critical condition. Hyundai has more.
A 61-year-old man who contracted the MERS virus while visiting his sick cousin at Samsung Medical Center and then passed away on June 14th from pneumonia. A 72-year-old woman who was hospitalized at Pyeongtaek St. Mary's Hospital and died on the 12th due to lung failure. Neither patient had a pre-existing illness. Patients 98 and 123 who died overnight on Monday were also free of any existing ailments. These 4 cases are ringing alarm bells with medical experts as they go against the conventional wisdom about MERS that it is not a threat to people who are healthy. The virus's incubation period of 2 to 14 days also seems to be breaking rules in Korea. Patient 146 contracted the virus from patient 14, known as a super spreader, between May 27th and 29th, but it was 16 to 18 days before he started showing symptoms of MERS. And patient 149 tested positive for the virus about 20 days after first coming into contact with someone with MERS. As the virus is relatively new not only to Korea but to the world, Korean health officials are having a hard time trying to get a handle on cases like these.
The incubation period is known to be from 2 to 14 days, but it can vary according to how you define the first contact or initial symptoms.
Currently, patients in their 50s represent the biggest proportion of MERS cases, followed by those in their 60s and those in their 40s. But the number of patients in their 40s is on the rise. On top of increasing number of tertiary infections, cases like these that challenge the conventional wisdom on MERS are making it harder for Korea's health authorities to get a full picture of the disease. Hyundai, Arirang News.
President Park Geun Hye visited an elementary school and a girls' middle school this morning, both of which reopened after a temporary shutdown due to the MERS outbreak. While not much detail about her visits have been revealed, President Park was planning to thank the teachers and healthcare staff for their efforts to prevent the virus spreading and to resume classes. The president was also expected to ask that the teachers relieve their anxiety and focus on normalizing educational activities. The World Health Organization's investigators had earlier advised local educators to resume classes since the outbreak was not directly linked to schools. The leaders of Korea's 2 main rival parties are spending this Tuesday visiting places affected by the outbreak. Ruling Saenuri Party leader Kim Woo-sung visited a hospital in western Seoul that was temporarily shut down for a few days ago, as part of efforts to contain the virus after it was confirmed that a MERS patient had spent a few days there. Moon Jae-in, leader of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, will visit a community health center in the southwestern county of Sunchang this afternoon. An entire town in that county is under quarantine after a MERS patient was found to have contact with hundreds of residents in the area before testing positive for the virus. Now, since the outbreak, the 2 party leaders have visited several MERS-related locations nationwide to meet the public and assess the current situation. President Park Geun Hye's office has indicated the president could veto a controversial bill that allows the National Assembly to request changes to presidential orders. Speaking to reporters earlier today, a presidential office official said the Parliament had revised just one word in the bill the day before, adding President Park still sees the bill as potentially unconstitutional. When asked about the timing of the veto, the official said it has not been decided. The rival political parties agreed the bill would state that the Assembly can, quote, request changes to ordinances rather than, quote, demand them, while the President has until the end of the month to decide the bill's fate. If and when she does veto it, it will be sent back to Parliament, where it will either be put to another vote or be discarded. Now, to some mixed signals coming out of North Korea. Pyongyang expressed a willingness to hold fresh talks with the South on Monday, but that conciliatory tone contrasts with the actions of leader Kim Jong-un, who observed a nighttime firing drill by Navy warships and ground artillery subunits. North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported on Tuesday that Kim arrived at an observation post at around 3 a.m., but it did not specify the exact date. The report said the drill was targeted at defending North Korea from enemy warships, which can infiltrate North Korean waters under the cover of darkness and during bad weather. Watchers say Seoul should question North Korea's sincerity for talks, given Kim's recent activities. It was many years in the works, but South Korea and the United States have finally put pen to paper on their updated nuclear energy cooperation pact. The deal still needs to undergo a rather lengthy review process by the US Congress, but It's expected to take effect by the end of this year. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and U.S. Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz signed the revised Civilian Nuclear Energy Cooperation Agreement on Monday in Washington, ending 4 years of arduous negotiations. While the new deal, updated from the existing 1974 pact, still bans Seoul from reprocessing and enrichment, it allows Korea to research a new technology for recycling spent nuclear fuel and to make low-level enriched uranium with U.S. consent. The agreement awaits approval from the U.S. Congress, but both sides said the deal strengthens their alliance.
Together with this Mutual Defense Treaty of 1954 and the Coros FTA of 2012, this should be another key pillar of our alliance.
U.S.-Korea partnership is an absolute anchor for peace and stability.
In Washington, Korea's top diplomat also met with U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice to discuss the possible rescheduling of President Park Geun Hye's visit to the country. The Korean leader postponed her trip last week to handle the outbreak of Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, in Korea. Yoon said Seoul will push for a summit with U.S. President Barack Obama within this year at the earliest possible time. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, with Korea and much of Asia paying keen attention to what expressions Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe uses in his upcoming war anniversary statement, the man himself has made clear that he plans to show remorse for Japan's wartime atrocities. But Abe made no reference to words like aggression or apology, raising questions about his sincerity. Son Jung-in reports.
Appearing in person for the first time ever on Chinese television, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said he intends to express remorse for those who suffered during World War II when he issues a statement in August to mark the 70th anniversary of the war's end. In an interview with Hong Kong's Phoenix TV, Abe said Japan regretted its wrongdoings during the war and added that the country will contribute more to achieve world peace. His remarks are noteworthy as they clarify his will to include such an expression of remorse in his forthcoming statement. But he failed once again to show a clear resolve to use words like colonial rule or aggression. He stressed his administration upholds the same historical views of former Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono and former Prime Minister Tomiichi Murayama, who both made landmark apologies for Japan's actions during the war, but Abe fell short of guaranteeing a sincere apology. It remains unclear whether the Prime Minister will make direct reference to his country's colonial rule and aggression in the August statement. This despite growing calls from Japanese intellectuals to include unequivocal words of reflection and apology. They say that reflecting without apologizing is a mere play on words and doesn't convey genuine remorse. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Korea is in the grip of one of the longest droughts to have ever affected the country. Reservoirs have receded and farmers are struggling to take care of their crops as rainfall has been half that of an average year. Experts say climate change means we'll be seeing more of the same every year unless the government takes action now. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Korea is stuck in a drought that some experts say could be the worst in over a century. While many researchers are still scratching their heads, some are leaning toward the theory that it's down by climate change caused by global warming. The Korea Meteorological Administration said Tuesday that accumulated rainfall in Seoul, Gyeonggi-do, and Gangwon-do provinces from the start of the year to mid-June was half that of an average year. Many experts say global warming is changing the length of the seasons, which has become a contributing factor to extreme weather phenomena, including droughts, typhoons, and heat waves. The nation's weather agency says it expects this year's rainy season to hit the central region in early July.
Looking at the mid-range forecast, we are seeing less rainfall than normal, so the monsoon season will probably arrive later than usual.
After analyzing the effects of climate change on the Korean peninsula, experts say that while the monsoon season might solve the drought for now, it's very likely Korea will suffer another extended dry period next year. They say the Korean government needs to establish long-term measures to counter droughts and the effects of climate change. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Korea's largest automaker Hyundai Motor has seen its production in India top the 6 million mark for the first time since its first factory opened there 17 years ago. Hyundai Motors says it's only the second time the car maker has recorded such high production figures from their plants abroad behind China. The Korean automaker has sold more than 3.7 million vehicles in India since 1998. The rest were exported to Mexico, Europe, South America and Asia. The Santro model was especially popular, accounting for 31% of all units sold. Hyundai Motor is hoping to make further inroads into India, which is the fourth largest auto market in the world. Well, those are the stories we have for you on this Tuesday lunchtime here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news, and do download our smartphone application. Until we see you next time, goodbye.